Let me tell you about a highly, highly relatable trap. So you wake up, you roll over, grab your phone off the nightstand, and you tell yourself, I'm just going to play one quick, totally innocent game of Wordle, right? But the second you finish guessing that five-letter word, your thumb just magically drifts over to Twitter, and then Instagram, then TikTok, and suddenly you snap out of this social media-induced stupor, and boom, 30 minutes of your morning are just completely gone. Well, welcome to This Explainer, because today we are unpacking exactly why that happens, and we're looking at how three different creators went to absolute extremes to take their time back. So I really want you to ask yourself, how often do you ruin your morning routine like that? Because it's almost never a conscious decision, is it? We check just one single notification, and it acts as this gateway into an involuntary scrolling spiral. Honestly, it kind of makes us feel like lab rats, just constantly being incentivized by digital cheese. But what's the actual, tangible cost of those spiraling mornings and those seemingly harmless screen checks? Well, the cost is 2 hours. 2 whole hours. That is the amount of time the average person currently spends on social media every single day. That's precious time taken away from, reading books, practicing your hobbies, actually connecting with friends, or simply just enjoying the real world. Basically, we're trading our actual physical lives for an endless feed of content. And to show you just how deeply this has altered our daily human behavior, get this. Since the introduction of the iPhone, chewing gum sales have absolutely plummeted. Seriously. Why? Well, because when we're waiting in the checkout line at the grocery store, we aren't looking around and making those impulse buys anymore, like grabbing a pack of Big Red gum. No, we are completely and totally absorbed in staring at our screens. Section 1. The Zero Friction Trap. Okay, so let's dive into this. The core issue here isn't a fundamental lack of willpower or discipline on your part. It's actually the fact that we live in a zero-friction environment. This is an ecosystem specifically designed by tech companies to remove literally all effort and barriers between an unconscious impulse and a digital reward. Bad habits that are born out of sheer convenience absolutely thrive here. Think about it. When it takes exactly zero effort to swipe open a feed, our doom scrolling becomes entirely non-deliberate. You aren't choosing to scroll. The frictionless environment is choosing for you. Section 2. The Extreme Phone Detox. So, if zero friction is the underlying problem, what actually happens when we introduce a massive amount of friction? Well, several creators decided to test this out by performing some seriously extreme phone detoxes. Creator Eddie Burback literally locked his smartphone inside a metal safe for 30 days just to see if he could survive modern life in a major city without it. And to pull this off, Eddie had to set up an entirely analog life. He bought a corded landline with a physical answering machine, an old-school loud alarm clock to wake up, and he spent a whole hour manually writing out his contacts onto an actual physical Rolodex. I mean, the sheer weight of what a tiny piece of glass in our pockets replaces is just astounding. But as you might guess, bringing back old tech brings back old problems. Reverting to a landline had some pretty hilarious absurdities. Eddie found himself constantly jogging across the room to answer a ringing phone, only to be met with up to 40 spam calls a day. He even found himself getting into these heated arguments with telemarketers who were actively trying to convince him that his name wasn't actually Eddie. Meanwhile, creator Matt Davavella tried a slightly different route. He went with the classic flip phone. But the friction of T9 texting was so incredibly tedious that he basically just stopped having real conversations. In fact, it got so bad that when his wife would send him a heartfelt I love you text, the effort to type back was so high that he'd literally just respond with the letter K. The real-world friction of going analog in a digital age is just incredibly high. Like, Eddie tried to go to the movies and ended up completely freezing an AMC ticket kiosk because he was trying to scan a giant QR code printed on a regular piece of paper from Staples. And later on, navigating with printed MapQuest directions, he missed a crucial turn. Instead of getting on the freeway, he somehow ended up parked near Echo Park Lake. Section 3. The Beauty of Boredom. Now, what's really interesting here is that beneath all those clumsy navigation errors and T9 texting struggles, these extreme detoxes unlocked some really profound and completely unexpected benefits. You see, when you remove the endless digital noise, your brain begins to revert to its natural state. It brings about the return of reality. Removing the phone allowed for true, uninterrupted boredom. For the first time in his adult life, Eddie could just sit on his couch and watch the rain fall in total peace. He literally sat down and read 100 pages of a physical book in a single sitting, completely uninterrupted by those phantom vibrations that usually haunt our pockets. And it completely changed how he interacted with people too. Today, making plans involves constant GPS sharing and a dozen texts back and forth saying, "Hey, I'm 5 minutes away." But Eddie noticed that in early seasons of the show Sex and the City, the characters just had this intentional, grown-up way of making plans. They agreed on a time, they agreed on a place, and they simply showed up. Without a phone, Eddie was forced to practice that exact same beautiful intentionality. Section 4. The cost of convenience. But look, while frictionless connectivity often replaces our ability to be present in our daily lives, going completely analog isn't exactly perfect either. As Matt Davella noted, we trade our happiness for convenience. During his experiment, he realized that without his smartphone, he totally stopped capturing photos and memories of his life. Going completely off the grid and reverting back to 1990s technology introduces a level of friction that might just be a bit too painful and isolating for the modern world. Section 5. Finding the sweet spot. So this brings us to the ultimate goal. We're looking for that Goldilocks solution, right? We need strategies that offer just the right amount of friction to stop the mindless scrolling, but not so much friction that you have to completely abandon modern society and carry around a heavy Rolodex. One practical compromise here is the smartwatch swap. Matt actually found his greatest success by swapping his smartphone for a cellular-enabled smartwatch. This was a brilliant compromise because it allowed him to take emergency phone calls, send really quick voice-to-text messages, and even use basic maps. But most importantly, it completely eliminated the physical ability to doom scroll social media. At the core of these successful compromises is author James Clear's third law of behavior change: make bad habits hard. Because sometimes overcoming these digital addictions isn't about having some crazy David Goggins level of willpower. It's simply about introducing a tiny, tiny bit of inconvenience to short-circuit our brain's automatic dopamine cravings. So how do we actually apply that in our daily lives? Enter Thomas Frank's stupidly simple logout method. It goes like this. Step 1, you log in when you intend to use an app. Step 2, you log out when you're done. And step 3, you face a 30-second friction barrier the next time you try to mindlessly open it. It takes you from a 3-second unconscious swipe to a 30-second deliberate chore of having to track down your password.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact same concept that food author Michael Pollan applies to dieting. He says, eat all the junk food that you want as long as you cook it yourself. When you actually have to put in the work, whether that's baking a cake totally from scratch or just typing in a tedious 2-factor authentication code, that tiny barrier of friction is very often enough to completely destroy the unconscious impulse to consume. So I'm going to leave you with a provocative question to chew on today. Will you choose comfort or will you choose your time? Because let me tell you, the day is absolutely never going to come when tech companies decide you need a break for your mental health. It is entirely up to you to add a little bit of friction back into your life. Stop waiting for the world to fix your attention span and go take back your own reality. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.